Before we go, make sure you support the channel by subscribe. I was sitting on the outskirts of a smoker's pole when I first heard about reality shifting. It was right after school started again for the semester. The bar was packed with students who had come back to campus to cross-examine each other on who had the better summer vacations and worst lineup of fall classes. It didn't seem like we should be going back to school. The night was too hot and full of energy, feeling more like the beginning of summer than the end. I felt the pull that I needed a minute away from the crowd. Like always, I slipped past the friends I had come out with to perch against the brick alley between the bar and the pizza place. Suspended in clouds that smelled like tobacco and candy, I pulled out my phone and turned my face up to the moon, letting the sweat cool on my skin. I listened to the sounds of light conversation, the familiar clicking ritual of lighters and dramatically exhaled breath. I've always loved spending time with smokers because they live their lives in snapshots, not in big pictures. I hate the smell and taste of it. Nicotine. Pot, all of it. I hate the feeling of something other than air in my lungs. But I love the undeniable. Fuck you, freedom of it. It's worth the secondhand smoke to have a break from the constant barrage of thinking about what comes next. To me, that forward thinking pressure has always felt like an ice pack on my forehead, heavy and soothing at first, and then a slow, irritating drip that I want to shut back into the freezer. That drip gets more pronounced as the days go on and on, always seeming to come back to the inevitable truth that we're playing a game like we're not going to die. Now or later, and quite possibly violently, too early and without any control. Smokers get it. They welcome death in little dribs and drags and do it in public with friends and, more often than not, smile. My mom was like that. A lipstick-stained American Spirit cigarette was her middle finger to a world she thought took itself too seriously. She was into puzzles, conspiracy theories, and all things New Age. She did tarot card readings on weekends and told me it was in our genes to hear the whispers of the universe, which meant anything from a remarkable bird to unusual burnt patterns in toast. She loved to challenge anything conventional, she loved to argue, and she loved to laugh. She adored horror movies and laughed the hardest when I tried to watch them with her, wincing and looking at the screen from between my fingers. But her snapshots ran out last summer. Last spring, her laughter was replaced by a cough, and the cough turned into a diagnosis, and the diagnosis into a gravestone. Lung cancer, the doctors said, as if those words could encapsulate the life force that was my mother. As if those two words were somehow a justifiable explanation for watching her slowly drown in her own blood. It's shockingly lonely to be an orphan, technically an adult, but feeling anything but, with no other family to speak of. My mom had been a free spirit to the extreme, which I loved her for, but wasn't everyone's cup of tea. There hadn't been a funeral, just me, her ashes, and a quiet lake. I've been told it gets easier, but it hasn't yet. Being around smokers reminds me of her. But I get clocked right away as someone who doesn't belong. I always have to fight against coughing, and the best I can do is fiddle with whatever object is closest instead of elegantly drawing out a cigarette from a pack, or whipping out a vape that looks like it costs more than a phone. Usually, they don't notice me, but if they do, they always know I'm not entirely on their level, banding together to sacrifice a little life for a bit of fun. Bullshit. The word was spoken with such disgust that it made me look up from my phone. I swear it's real. But you don't have to believe me. A woman with a pink wolf cut raised her hands up defensively, a joint smoldering loosely between her fingers. I don't. Because it's bullshit. You would literally do anything to get out of doing this essay. Her companion, about half a foot taller in heeled boots, took a hit from their vape and raised their eyebrows pointedly. I literally already finished the essay. Almost. And shifting actually helped me. My ears perked up at that. I needed inspiration to get me through these first few weeks back on campus. The first one since my mother died. How? Their voice was more a criticism than an actual question. But the pink-haired woman answered anyway. Well, I've been training all summer. She pulled out her phone and thumbed through it, pulling up something I couldn't catch from my vantage point and displaying it with a flourish. Her companion steadied it in front of her face, peered down in the low light, and tightly winced when they saw whatever it was. Can you not say that like it's a sport? Watching TikTok videos isn't training. Why are you being so negative? And how would you know? Without warning, the woman jerked her head towards me, sporting a sharp glare I hadn't realized I earned. Without thinking, I had been staring at them while they spoke, and I felt the blood rush to my cheeks, and a blush I hoped wasn't too visible in the darkness. Did you want a hit? She raised her eyebrows, thrusting out her hand that held the joint. It was an accusation more than it was an offer. I licked my lips, which felt papery, and put my phone in my pocket, almost dropping it in my rush to reassure them I wasn't doing anything suspicious. I rubbed my sweaty palms on my jeans, keeping my hands busy. I tried again to find the words and then gave up, drowning in awkwardness. I'm good. I settled on weakly, feeling anything but. I slid off my perch and tried to make myself as small as possible as I slowly fled. It was not the first misalignment with being ousted from a place I didn't quite belong, and probably not the last. It was an involuntary habit of mine. When I got back to the bar, I pretended it never happened, drinking away the blush on my face and mentally petitioning whatever higher power was listening that I wouldn't run into the two people I'd been listening in on. I didn't, thankfully. But the subject had intrigued me. The woman's adamant certainty and her companion's utter disdain. It drifted in and out of the forefront of my conscience between classes and planning out calendars of tests and quizzes. The thought lingered in the back of my mind over the following weeks, coupled with a sting of embarrassment that I worried it like a sore tooth. The stars aligned on Halloween. I was awake way later than I should have been, debating if I should try to sleep at all. I'd caught myself spending an entire hour switching between streaming services and browsing video games, looking for another distraction that I couldn't quite settle on. I had declined every offer to go out and celebrate. I kept thinking about how much I missed my mom on her favorite holiday, pulled toward a void I couldn't fill with a text or a call to her like I used to. It was then that the thought flickered and stuck in place for the first time. Shifting is what the woman with the pink hair had called it. I unlocked my phone, pulled open a few social media platforms, and tried a few combinations to figure out what she'd been talking about. It took 15 minutes or so to find the meat of it. Reality shifting was somehow so popular that there were 100,000 people on the subreddit, but still no Wikipedia article. The general idea was that you could transform your reality through focus and visualization into a book, a TV show, or just about anything you wanted. I stayed up until light leaked through my window, flipping through first-hand accounts of shifting in scripts, which were essential world-building maps of where you wanted to go. I started taking notes on it like I should have done for the paper I was supposed to be writing. I had this weird, light-headed, giddy feeling throughout the next day, not just from sleep deprivation. The concept of shifting realities appealed to me in a way that nothing ever had before. It was fascinating to me. I zoned out in class, flipping through video after video, script after script, consuming everything I could about it. The content was open and inquisitive. A community built on safe spaces where folks asked questions and gave each other tips. It was a strangely comforting thought, to dive into a reality where the rules could be rewritten. But after walking through dozens of open doors of friendly forums, I found one that was effectively closed. It was a script that I could find references to, but there was no full copy available online. and no one seemed to know who to ask. But the word was hashtagged in a few places, and a few bottom-of-the-barrel searches yielded some results. Epimede. In theory, Epimede was a script, but the accounts I could find about it were odd and piecemeal compared to the other content lost in a bunch of advertisements for some kind of diabetes medication. The reality-shifting experiences I'd found up until that point were bright, technicolor, lush sorts of things, like a chance to tour your favorite magical world or medical drama soap opera. Epimede was different. It was described as, for lack of a better way of putting it, an empty series of hallways with clay figurines scattered throughout. The clay objects were always white or red and always in different places. The hallways were completely empty. Just a blank, white series of angular architecture that seemed somewhere between an art gallery and perfectly generic storerooms, like an abandoned mall. It was like someone had ripped apart the screenplay for a thriller and left it adrift on the internet. And of all the different options at my fingertips, every universe I could go to, this is the one that called to me. I wasn't alone. There were comments all over the place, trying to find out more, to find even just a piece of the original script. Because no one, not a single person, had a full explanation of what happened there. I started to interact more actively with this subgroup. My evenings were filled with exchanging DMs, each a puzzle piece forming a more bizarre image of the Epimede mystery. People had shifted and come back, each offering only snippets. I found the white apple, I touched the red sewing box. I gazed through the white magnifying glass. I held the red penny in my palm. The deeper I got into the Epimede discussions, the less alone I felt. It was weirdly comforting, like finding a hidden room in a house you've lived in your whole life. You can't believe you missed it before, but now that you've found it, it becomes the most interesting thing about it. That's what Epimede was for me. A newly discovered space that felt more like home than anywhere else. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged. And my mom would have loved it. The strange, eerie mystery of it. I imagined her sitting next to me, long fingernails pointing at things on the screen that caught her eye, tapping my shoulder like she used to when she got excited about something. For the first time, I got what made my mom so intrigued about stuff like this. I wanted to know. I wanted to see those white and red objects for myself. I wanted to wander those empty hallways. I didn't just want to read about it or hear secondhand stories. I wanted to experience it, to be part of this strange secret club that had been captivated by this same inexplicable pull. So I wrote myself a script. I had imagined it so many times already, and the basics of the world were simple enough that it was easy to write. I left the clay objects open-ended and the walls blank. I followed each of the directions exactly, sitting upright against the pillows on my bed with my eyes closed, taking deep breaths to relax. I said the affirmations. I imagined myself sitting on a train on my way there, trying to get my heartbeat to match the soft rhythm of it.